A surprise announcement stirs the pot of election stew in 2016.
I realize in my life right now it was time for change, time to turn the page.
An 8-term congressman from Jacksonville taking his hat out of the ring. There could be 24 people looking at a run for Capitol Hill now.
He'll be sorely missed. He did a good job representing Northeast Florida and also did a good job representing our state.
Well, Andrew let me know. I was surprised. He's been a strong voice for Jacksonville for so many years.
Reaction to the end of campaigning for Andrew Crenshaw and what it means for Northeast Florida voters on This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us today. Jacksonville's Andrew Crenshaw shook things up this week, revealing that he will not run for re-election this summer and fall. He plans to finish his 8th term in Congress and then step aside. News4Jax reporter Jim Piggott and I had a conversation with Crenshaw the same day he made his decision public in the nation's capital.
Bringing a national cemetery is something I'm awfully proud of. Having an expanded veterans clinic is another accomplishment.
U.S. Representative Andrew Crenshaw reflecting for a moment on what he considers proud accomplishments since his initial election to the House in 2000 and the start of his service in 2001. Crenshaw's decision to stand aside at the end of his term came in his most recent trip home from Washington.
Well, the last couple of weeks when I was home in Jacksonville, my wife Kitty and I talked a lot about what we want to do in the future and thought about the fact that what a tremendous privilege it's been to represent this community where my family's lived for 4 generations. Thought about some of the accomplishments that we've been involved in. And it just seemed like the right time to say we're going to turn the page on this chapter of my life and see what's next. So I'm looking forward to what's next. I don't know. But again, it's just a privilege to have served. I'm proud of what we've done and been able to accomplish a lot for the constituents as well as our country.
When it came to a surprise decision, he spoke to his staff first, then word got out.
Well, one of the reasons that I didn't tell anybody ahead of time is because I wanted my staff to hear from me personally. I didn't want them to read it in the newspaper or hear somebody talking about it. So I wanted to be sure that I told them that was the main goal that I had, to thank them for all the work that they've done. And so I was able to do that. When I came back up here on Tuesday, we had a staff meeting, and I told them of my decision. I told them that it was going to be announced the next morning, but wanted them to hear it first.
Crenshaw spent time representing Jacksonville to the state's House of Representatives in the 70s, then to the Senate in the 80s and 90s. Finally, his measured approach to lawmaking made its way to Washington, where Crenshaw earned the reputation for supporting Northeast Florida and the nation's military.
I've worked to bring more ships to Mayport, more planes to NAS Jax. Blunt Island is alive and well. I wanted to be sure that we have the best trained, best equipped military in the world. That's what we've been working to do.
Crenshaw won't, so far, name a person to replace him, and his Southern humor and charm hasn't waned over the years.
I'm happy that I live in a democracy where anybody that wants to run for office can stand up and speak out. And the fact that I'm leaving has more to do with my own personal decision to say I'm proud of what I've done, and I'm sure that someone good will come along. And I guess it's good news that so many people have expressed interest, because out of that, our democracy will bring someone forward that I hope will do a good job. No, this is really just about change. I'm as healthy as I've ever been. Thank you for telling me that I look like I'm 55. My wife thinks I'm still handsome. But this is really about just realizing that it's been a tremendous privilege, being proud of the work that I've done, and realizing it's probably good to change and see what's next.
And I visited Crenshaw's office in Washington, D.C. last week to thank him and his staff for their support of the HOPE Act, benefiting people with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. In addition, he told me that he's very proud of something called the ABLE Act, Achieving a Better Life Experience. He says that reforms the law relating to individuals with disabilities like Down syndrome or autism. So we welcome our guests here, Jennifer Carroll, our News4Jax political analyst, in addition to Chris Hand, the former chief of staff for Mayor Alvin Brown, as we talk about what was a pretty big surprise to folks throughout Northeast Florida. Did it surprise you to hear the announcement?
It did, especially at 10:30 at night.
Right.
But, you know, you do these things in timing, and probably it's good for Andrew Crenshaw for his next move, which he hasn't told us what it's going to be. But he's done very well for Northeast Florida, particularly our military, our veterans, and our business, our defense contractors. He's done absolutely fantastic for these individuals. As a matter of fact, Chairman Young, passed away a few years ago, was in charge, and he started this, the Defense Expo, which after Chairman Young expired, Andrew Crenshaw picked it up and it brought it up to Northeast Florida, connecting small defense contractors so they'll have a better opportunity to apply for these larger contracts and be in the same game as the big boys. So he's done a lot for economic development and our military as well, and we should appreciate everything that he's done.
And Chris, what about you, the experience you had in office for 4 years in the city of Jacksonville? It seemed like Congressman Crenshaw was very plugged in to what the city's needs were, right?
Well, he's of course, is always your first call in a matter involving, as Lieutenant Governor Carroll said, military or national security or veterans, kind of given some of the work he's done in that area. But Kent, one of the things I'll always kind of think about when I think about Andrew Crenshaw is civility. We're in a political year where there's a lot of noise, there's some shouting, and he is someone who's always worked very hard to be civil, gentlemanly, act courteous, work across party lines, and that's very consistent with his predecessors in this seat. Charlie Bennett, the longtime congressman, Tilly Fowler, who succeeded Congressman Bennett. Andrew Crenshaw has been part of that legacy of civil congressional service, working with people well, and in the political year we're in, I think that's a pretty impressive legacy to have.
Isn't that unusual?
Right, yeah.
So is that something that sets the tone for who is going to ultimately run and ultimately be elected in this seat, that it needs to be someone who can display some of those qualities?
Well, that's what the voters would expect. Additionally, Northeast Florida, Duval, Baker, St. John's, need to look for someone in this area, because if we have someone outside of the area that's going to probably have a good chance of winning and be elected, how would that fare well for this northern sector of Northeast Florida, where we've been accustomed to having two representatives taking care of us, our major bases, our military, our defense, our river and infrastructure and transportation, and now Corinne Brown has her issues, and if she happens to either lose her election to someone out west, west of Florida, and or gets other issues happening to her, we could potentially in Northeast Florida, our northern area here, lose out representation that's right in our backyard.
Yeah, and I'd also point out that down in St. Johns County, Volusia, that congressional district there, Ron DeSantis is not running for re-election because he's running for U.S. Senate. So even another person who could be a voice for Northeast Florida, not going to be there. How do voters kind of come together and say, hey, we want to make sure that we're represented well?
Well, I think one sort of saving grace we have is I think everyone should feel very lucky that we still have someone in Bill Nelson in the United States Senate who has built up a lot of seniority in Congress, also focused on some of these defense and maritime issues, and has been very committed to Jacksonville. So we still have his seniority. But I think you raised the key point that the selection voters is going to have is going to be very important. And as you know, it's kind of a fasten your seatbelts August 30th primary, because there's so much on the ballot that voters are going to have to decide about. These congressional primaries, and there's going to be 3 contested congressional primaries in districts 4, 5, and 6, are going to be very important for voters to pay attention to what qualities they need in people that they send to Washington to represent us.
Yeah, and beyond those congressional issues, we know we've got some local issues that'll be out there. I'm thinking specifically Clay County. They're going to be voting on a sheriff and some other things. Always look forward to hearing your perspective, and appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, well, we are digging deeper and going direct to the local leaders of the political parties. Republican Lake Ray and Democrat Neil Hendrickson joining us next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Spring is the best time to lease a 2016 SRX from Claude Nolan Cadillac. Drive a 2016 Cadillac SRX for just $329 a month for 24 months. And remember the Claude Nolan Edge. No dealer fees, no finance markup, saving you thousands. Come in for a test drive today.
For top quality floors at rock bottom prices, come to Floor & Decor.
If you haven't been to Floor & Decor before, this is the time to go.
Wow, I cannot believe this selection.
I can get great prices at Floor & Decor every single day.
Tile, porcelain, slate, hardwoods, laminates. They've got every option that you can possibly imagine.
For the price, for the quality, to me it's a no-brainer.
Run, don't walk.
Trust me, go. Floor & Decor. north of I-295 on Blanding Boulevard.
Mesothelioma. It's a disease caused from exposure to asbestos. If you know someone diagnosed, you should visit forthepeople.com. There you'll find the most up-to-date medical treatment options available and free mesothelioma question and answer book. We can help guide you and your family through these difficult times and even provide assistance to veterans in filing for their VA claims. Call us at 1-800-MORGAN-LAW or visit forthepeople.com. We can help.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
If I had to replace all of my teeth, I wouldn't want to be without them for even a single day. It's simply not an option. That's why Highbridge makes so much sense. You always have teeth. Most people are completely done in less than 4 months, and the doctors are absolutely incredible. Now that's something to smile about. Call your Highbridge certified doctor today. They'll answer all of your questions. Highbridge, the simple way to a lasting smile.
At Claude Nolan Cadillac, every customer receives the Claude Nolan Edge. It's simple. No dealer fees, no finance markup, saving you thousands. Get the Edge. Save time and money and start driving your Claude Nolan Cadillac today.
8:45 a.m. Southside. 550 athletes, 4 counties, 1 tough competition. Volunteering to help Special Olympic athletes have the time of their lives. That's why when Evelyn gets up, she turns on Channel 4. She can track fast-moving storms with the Weather Authority app, find trouble spots with time-saver traffic, and get breaking news from a team she considers family. On these fields, volunteers make special smiles happen. In Jacksonville, the Morning Show makes mornings happen. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
Thanks for staying with us this morning. Joining us in this segment, the respective leaders of the local political parties. Neil Henriksen, chairman of the Duval County Democrats, and Lake Ray III, chairman of the Duval County Republicans. So to each of you, first impressions of how redistricting and now the retirement of Andrew Crenshaw is going to affect Northeast Florida residents in terms of having their voices heard on Capitol Hill.
Well, I think it's very exciting that we're going to have some, potentially new blood in Congress in Congressional District 4. I think we all appreciate the service of Congressman Crenshaw and his time in the Capitol, but I think in this year in particular where new ideas, new blood is something interesting. So I look forward to the election.
And Lake Ray, this particular congressional seat, some would say is gerrymandered to favor a Republican here. Lots of folks right away saying, maybe this is my opportunity to get into Congress.
A lot of people looking. There's 6 or 7 that are very serious, and I think another 6 or 7 that are at least taking a look at it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting. I think people have been watching it for some time, expecting that Congressman Crenshaw would be retiring, and then it would be who's going to be moving into what square.
It seemed like it was still a surprise. Many of the folks that I've talked to this past week said, I didn't expect it now. We thought maybe in a couple of years for Andrew Crenshaw. I'd also like to point out that because of redistricting, Congresswoman Brown, Corrine Brown, has got a different kind of challenge here. It seems like it's at least possible that's going to be a very tough race for her this coming fall.
Well, I think if you look at the numbers of her congressional district, even with the change from redistricting, she has, an excellent chance of winning based on the weight of the Jacksonville vote and the number of Democrats in the district.
Yeah. So if she were somehow not the return congresswoman from that particular district, we know Congressman Crenshaw is not going to be there. Congressman DeSantis is running for Senate. So what's your view on how, and this is a little bit of what we just talked about in that last segment, how does Northeast Florida get their voices heard if we end up with only one or maybe none of those 3 seats filled by somebody from Jacksonville or the area?
I think it's important to make sure that as we look forward, those that have experience, whether that's legislative experience or whether that's business experience, but somebody that's got some experience to be able to move the needle. It's a complicated process. There's so many number of members there, so it's not easy to get something done. A lot of that tends to be by the seniority system, and as a result of that, it means that there's going to be some absence in there. I think when you look at that and then you lay that over to what's going on in the congressional district that runs out to Tallahassee, the real question there is going to be if Congresswoman Brown either doesn't run or should not prevail, then that means the district and the entire Northeast Florida will be represented by those that are just coming in. So experience is going to be something that's going to really be key, and somebody who knows how to move that needle.
Yeah. I do need to ask about an issue with a Jacksonville politician, State Representative Reggie Fullwood. Just on Friday this week, we understood that he was indicted in federal court. 10 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts failure to file federal income tax returns. He pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him in a court appearance Friday, but he faces a maximum of 204 years in prison, $2.9 million in fines. So let me bring this out. This is, again, a local issue, but Neil, why don't you kind of weigh in for me? State Representative Fullwood's got some legal troubles here.
Right. I mean, well, Representative Fullwood certainly has been an able representative for our community in the House, in the Florida House. Just even recently with the legislation bringing the pension issue to a forehead in Tallahassee. At this point, though, I think the process needs to play out the way it's intended to play out, which is to give a fair hearing, and you presume someone's innocent, and the process moves forward.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? I know a colleague there in the House,
Sure.
and also somebody from City Council back in the day here in Jacksonville.
Well, I think it's very unfortunate, and I certainly hope and wish the very best for him. But I think that the thing that's more troubling is when we see things like this, it certainly raises questions, and it makes those of us that serve in public life go under the microscope a whole lot more. And thus it makes more and more people less and less likely to serve. And I think somehow or another we have to bridge that gap of having good people that are willing to step up and serve with honor and integrity.
Yeah. Final thing, and about 30 seconds for each of you. Is the bench ready in Duval County? Are there Democrats, are there Republicans ready to step in and run for Congress or the State House of Representatives?
Oh, I think on the Democratic side, we have a lot of folks who are interested, excited about possible opportunities, a bench that goes to former state representatives, state senators, current state representatives and senators, former mayors. So we feel good about that bench in all these races.
Yeah. What are you hearing, Mike?
Well, I think that we've got a number of people, some that are going to be new faces that seem to be looking at the congressional seat as well. But certainly we've got some that have been around the block a few times. Of course, our past sheriff is looking at that. I know that a few people are talking about me being in that race as well. And I will tell you that I am looking at it and studying what that looks like. But the real question is who's the one that can push the ball across the line and can bring the experience that we need. And I think that we've got a lot of experience, a lot of depth, and it's going to be an interesting
very interesting
20 weeks coming up here.
And early fall. Lake Ray, Neil Henderson, thank you so much. Appreciate hearing from each of you as you lead the Duval County chapters of your political parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, still to come here, very different subject and another very important subject. Ability Housing CEO Shannon Nasworth joins us next on This Week in Jacksonville.
See the timeless story of Cinderella as it comes to life on stage in a dazzling new ballet production with the Jacksonville Symphony, April 29th and 30th at the Times Union Center. Call 354-5547 or jacksymphony.org to get your tickets today.
Nissan's family of crossovers with intuitive all-wheel drive. See driving in a more confident light. For a limited time, lease Rogue, just $189 per month, or save up to $1,250. Take on Mother Nature. Shop ChooseNissan.com.
High-speed internet from AT&T. With 99.9% reliability, you can keep calm, your internet's on.
Are you ready to get bit?
Monday, April 18th, the Sharks play their home opener versus our in-state rivals, the Orlando Predators. It's Redneck Night, so comb out your mullets and y'all get out your best camo. It's a buy one ticket, get one ticket free offer for all adults, and kids get in free. That's right, kids are free. Call 621-0700 or go to jacksharks.com and get your tickets now.
See you at the game.
For a limited time at Tire Kingdom, buy 2 tires, get 2 free with purchase of value installation on 4 select tires. Choose from these top tire brands. Buy 2 tires, get 2 free. Now at Tire Kingdom Service Centers.
Our website is a great place to go to learn more about us, the results we've had. We have 24/7 live chat, answers to frequently asked questions. It's a good resource to go to.
Harrell and Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
We have the skinny on vanity sizing.
These look cute, but they are super big.
Are the retailers changing the sizes to make you think you're a smaller size than you really are? All New Oz.
Monday at 4 on Channel 4.
This week, we brought you an update on the deplorable living conditions at Washington Heights. The community has the same owner as the troubled Eureka Gardens complex. News4Jax exposed squalor at both properties for the past 6 months, to the point where HUD has told Reverend Richard Hamlet and his Global Ministries Foundation to sell both complexes. Now, City Councilman Tommy Hazouri is saying Hamlet needs to pack up and leave Jacksonville. As we've reported, a new inspection done by HUD confirms Washington Heights is in even worse condition than Eureka Gardens. Councilman Hazouri now calling out Richard Hamlet, or Reverend Hamlet, saying that he should be ashamed. Hazouri is also promising help for the city, or from the city, for more than 200 families at Washington Heights.
Our tax money and their livelihood and their quality of life. You got people having 2 jobs, and then they come back to a home that's not really a home. We've got to get a handle on it. And, you know, it's never too late. But the thing is as far as I'm concerned, it's too late for Mr. Hamlet, for Reverend Hamlet. Why he calls himself a reverend, I don't know.
Our topic for the rest of the program is Fair Housing Month, what that means, and how the community gets there. So joining us right now, Shannon Nasworth, Executive Director for Ability Housing of Northeast Florida. Ability Housing serving homeless and people at risk of homelessness for 25 years now. So how do you feel as a leader of that organization for the people of Jacksonville when you see what we've kind of uncovered and exposed for those folks at Eureka Gardens in Washington Heights?
Well, obviously, no one should be forced to live in conditions like that. And I guess for me, what it shows is the desperate need for more affordable housing. People only stay there because they have no other options. We've got to find ways to give them other options. What
would those sorts of things be? Now, we talked to a city councilman this week who said, hey, if I lived there, I'd take my voucher back and I'd go somewhere else. That's easier said than done, isn't it?
It is. One, it's not up to the resident's choice to just take their voucher back. The voucher is tied to that physical piece of property. Now, there are things we can do to work with HUD to see if maybe we can move those vouchers to other places, or find maybe a national nonprofit with the capacity to come in and take on over 800 units of housing, because across their portfolio here in Jacksonville, it's over 800 units. That's a lot of housing that is very distressed. It's going to take a lot of partnership and the whole community coming together to reinvest to the degree that is necessary. And we're probably going to have to come up with some more creative solutions and work with HUD and the city and the nonprofits all together to come up with a permanent solution for these families.
Is it a matter of, hey, these 2 properties are, that they've just been the ones who've been caught and everybody kind of does this, or is this an aberration? Is this well beyond what usually happens in low-income housing like this?
No, it's an aberration. I mean, it's not the only time it's ever happened, and that's very unfortunate. Most people who own affordable housing really are trying to provide a quality place for people to live. One of the challenges is, though, the way these projects are financed, once it's built, there really isn't any money to put back into the property 20, 30, 40 years later. Yes, they need to reinvest as the property is aging, but at a certain point, you've got to put a major capital reinvestment into that property, roofs, HVAC units, appliances, all those types of things. And it's hard to get that kind of resource.
Well, where does that money come from? Is that where the federal government comes in with dollars? Or is that, hey, as the property owner and manager, I need to be setting aside money to do that at the right time?
Oh, absolutely. The owners always have to be putting aside money because in the end you have to reinvest in your properties. Hopefully you'll, with those rent subsidies that they have, they can get a loan to put, like when you buy a house and want to rehab it. Exactly that same kind of scenario. But sometimes there just isn't enough in your own resources, and that is where you have to find other resources, whether it's the HUD, the state, the city, bond financing, various complex options.
Well, Shannon, tell me a little bit about a year ago, I think we talked right here about expanding into Orlando. Tell me about Ability Housing and what you're accomplishing right now. And it's specific to, we're talking about Fair Housing Month.
Well, so what we do is we provide affordable housing to persons who are homeless, at risk, and adults with disabilities. And as you know, frequently they are the victim of discrimination. So fair housing is very important. And fair housing is actually part of the Civil Rights Act. It is one of the civil rights Dr. King was fighting for. And it was passed right after he passed because it was one of his core principles. Housing is one of the most important aspects of having your civil rights honored. And so what Ability Housing does is help those who really have trouble accessing housing, mostly because of affordability, but sometimes for other reasons.
Is it something that applies to what we were just talking about with Eureka Gardens or Washington Heights?
Yes. I mean, in the end, people with disabilities frequently are living on very limited incomes, and so they need deeply affordable housing, and that's what Ability Housing focuses on. And we have taken much smaller properties, but properties like Eureka Gardens that had HUD contracts that were highly distressed, and we were able to secure the resources to purchase it, reinvest in it, and now it's high-quality housing again, because everyone deserves a nice place to live and raise their kids.
Yeah, and especially some help for some of those who are struggling, trying to do it right, but need that little boost. So, Shannon Nesworth, appreciate it. Appreciate what you're doing with Ability Housing, and thanks for sharing your insights today.
Thank you very much.
All right. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. So next Sunday, join us. We're going to have our visit with Commissioner of Agriculture, Adam Putnam, right here. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching.
News 4 Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.